events which define the boundaries of our own time and the time of others who are important to us. I believe that we mark not so much to describe the end of something, but to note the beginning of what is ours, of where we start. We need to measure, not to look back at where we've been, but to look forward at where we're going. When Chuck Leone spoke at the 1994 Summer Church Retreat at Redbud Retreat Center, he spoke about the journeys we each take. Those journeys are common to all of us, and they all have a beginning, a starting point, a place that distinguishes past from future, a milestone that marks a beginning. Some beginnings are quite dramatic: birth, a first kiss. Some are more gradual, like the process of coming of age, but they all share one characteristic. Things are different looking back than they are looking forward. Rudyard Kipling wrote many stories for children and adults. Among his best are the Just So stories. Chuck's favorite is called The Elephant's Child, and it's a story about how the elephant, who at one time had a very short nose, got a trunk. It's not a version that would have Charles Darwin's stamp of approval. It's a fanciful tale of a new beginning for the elephant's child. It starts with dissatisfaction, an elephant's child who is full of satiable curiosity.
In the high and far-off times, the elephant had no trunk. He had only a blackish, bulgy nose, as big as a boot, that he could wriggle about from side to side, but he couldn't pick up things with it. There was one elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of satiable curiosity, and that means he asked ever so many questions. He asked questions about everything that he saw or heard or felt or smelt or touched, and all his uncles and aunts spanked him, and still he was full of satiable curiosity. One fine morning in the middle of the equinox, this elephant's child asked a new fine question that he had never asked before. He asked, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" Then everybody said, "Hush," in a loud tone, and they spanked him immediately and directly without stopping for a long time.
That dissatisfaction with the way things are, that satiable curiosity, leads to a journey to find out the answer to what the elephant's child thought was an important question. What does the crocodile have for dinner? Then the Colo Colo bird said, "Go to the banks of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out." That very next morning, the elephant's child took bananas, sugar cane, and melons and went away. Now you must know that till that very week, this elephant's child had never seen a crocodile and did not know what one was like. When he reached the banks of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, the first thing he found was a bicolored python rock snake curled around a rock. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these parts?"
"Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bicolored python rock snake in a voice of scorn. "What will you ask me next?" "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but can you kindly tell me what he has for dinner?" Then the bicolored python rock snake uncoiled himself very quickly from the rock and spanked the elephant's child with his scalesome, flailsome tail. And the elephant's child said goodbye very politely to the bicolored python rock snake and helped him to coil up on the rock again, eating melons and throwing the rind about, because he could not pick it up until he trod on what he thought was a log of wood at the very edge of the great gray-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees.
For those of you who don't know the story, the elephant's child did find out what the crocodile has for dinner. Elephant's child. The resulting encounter with the crocodile was most distressing. Then the elephant's child put his head down close to the crocodile's musky, tusky mouth, and the crocodile caught him by his little nose. At this, the elephant's child was much annoyed, and he said, speaking through his nose, "Let go, you are hurting me." Then the bicolored python rock snake scuffled down the bank and said, "Pull as hard as you can." And the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled, and his nose began to stretch. And at each pull, his nose grew longer and longer, and it hurt him hideous. Then the elephant's child felt his legs slipping, and he said through his nose, which was now nearly 5 feet long, "This is too much for me." Then the bicolored python rock snake came down from the bank, knotted himself into a double clove hitch around the elephant's child's hind legs, and said, "Keep pulling."
Everything turned out okay. The crocodile finally let go, and the elephant's child, with the help of the bicolored python rock snake, escaped from the near disaster of becoming the crocodile's dinner. The net result was that the elephant's child found out what he thought he wanted to know, what the crocodile has for dinner, but in the process got something he did not expect, a trunk. It was a new beginning. Sometimes we can plan our new starts, what we want to do and where we want to go. But often as not, it's a surprise. And our reaction and adjustment to that surprise are the changes which help us grow.
The elephant's child went to the banks of the great gray-green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile had for dinner. That was his plan. He came back with a different nose. That was a surprise. The elephant's child wrapped up his nose in cool banana leaves and hung it in the Limpopo River to cool. "What are you doing that for?" said the bicolored python rock snake. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but my nose is badly out of shape and I am waiting for it to shrink." "Then you will have to wait a long time," said the bicolored python rock snake. "Some people do not know what is good for them."
The next day, a fly came and stung the elephant's child on his shoulder. Before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his trunk and hit that fly dead with the end of it. "Vantage number 1, said the bicolored python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Try and eat a little now." Before he thought what he was doing, the elephant's child put out his trunk and plucked a large bundle of grass, dusted it clean against his legs, and stuffed it into his mouth. "Vantage number 2, said the bicolored python rock snake. "You couldn't have done that with a mere smear nose. Don't you think the sun is very hot here?" "It is," said the elephant's child, and before he thought what he was doing, he slooped up a sloop of mud from the banks of the great gray-green greasy Limpopo and slapped it on his head. "Vantage number 3, said the bicolored python rock snake. You couldn't have done that with a mere schmear nose.
There are some common elements we see in New Beginnings. One is the element of surprise, that we get something different from what we expected. The other is that there are companions who are there when the surprise becomes too much to handle. The bicolored python rock snake was a good friend, and without his help, the elephant's child would have been the crocodile's dinner. Many religions recognize this new beginning and its meaning to us in our lives. In Christianity, the dramatic event of the resurrection begins life again for Jesus and becomes the model for the Christian belief of new beginnings in heaven with God and the saints. Hindus believe in reincarnation, the passing of the soul from one life on the earth to another.
Native Americans see beginnings in nature, the cycles of life and the seasons, the continual renewal of life. But where are we as Unitarian Universalists? We don't have a predefined set of beliefs that tell us what to expect upon rebirth in this life or in the next. It seems to me that most of us still want to know what the crocodile has for dinner, and we're willing to take the journey to find the answer.
The results of that journey yield more than the answer to the question. The encounter with the crocodile defines a beginning, a new way of looking at life and at ourselves. And our companions are there to help us along when we meet the crocodile and as we celebrate our transitions. The offering is a sacrament of the Free Church. It is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values.